Kia ora, everybody, good. I'd like to acknowledge the official election results that are out today, confirming the result that Labor received on election night, 34 seats for Labor. I'd like to acknowledge and congratulate those MPs who have picked up a seat, an electorate seat, on the official vote count, and also acknowledge those who have fallen behind in their seats on the official vote count. There are still a number of seats where the margin is very, very close. I think it is likely that we'll see some recounts in electorate seats, so there'll be a process for that, and we need to allow the time for that to happen before we get an absolute final outcome of this year's general election. But the result does confirm the overall allocations of seats in the coming Parliament. Now that that has been done, I would like to take a moment to reflect on and thank those MPs who are not going to be returning to this Parliament, a number of whom are Labor members of Parliament. I'd like to thank them for the contribution that they have made over 3 and potentially 6 very difficult and challenging years for New Zealand, and recognise that through our democratic process it can be quite a lot of upheaval from election to election, and certainly this election there's a lot of upheaval for those who are not going to be returning, and I want to thank them for their service and thank them for the contribution that they have made to making New Zealand a better place. The final result now being out, albeit there may be a little bit of shifting around some of those more marginal seat results, does mean that Christopher Luxon can now get on with the task of forming his new government. It's clear that a National Act, New Zealand First government is required in order to get a majority in the new Parliament, and so over however long it takes, he will have the opportunity to form that government. We will continue as the caretaker government, as we have over the last 3 weeks, until the outcome of that process is known.
How did you lose all but one of the Māori seats?
If you look at the Māori seat vote, there's a very, very strong Labour Party vote there, so there was a clear vote splitting that was going on in the Māori electorate. So we saw them voting Labour with their party vote, wanting us to continue in government, but wanting, if you like, a Māori Party voice within that government.
How did someone ironically though, Mika Fight said he was the only one not to win his seat? Was that a punishment for the defection?
Obviously, that's a question for the voters of Ikaroa Rāwhiti. I welcome Kushla to our team. She was a very, very formidable candidate, ran a very, very strong campaign in Ikaroa Rāwhiti, and we're very pleased with that outcome.
Tamaki Makaurau,
I'll let you have one more and then I'll come to you, Mikey.
Tamaki Makaurau, only 4 votes ahead is the closest seat in the country. Will you recount that seat?
I've had a brief conversation with Penny Hinari. Obviously, I haven't had a chance to call everybody yet, but I indicated to him if he wants to call for a recount, he'll have my full support to do that.
You've spoken to Penny Hinari. What is he saying? How is he feeling?
I'm sure, he's disappointed. I think everyone will understand he's disappointed to have seen the numbers that, gave him a modest margin on the night, turn around on special votes. It is only 4 votes, and as I've indicated, if he wants to call for a recount, he'll have my absolute support to do that.
And in terms of the Māori seats, do you take any responsibility for failing to give voters something to vote for?
Well, if you look at the party vote numbers, they show that actually there was strong support for Labor amongst Māori voters. We won the party vote in every one of those electorates.
Well, by that logic, then that says that Kelvin Davis and Kina Hira, they were not considered up to the job there.
And I think in some cases it was a question of, look, there'll be plenty of time to go through this, but it could well have been that Māori voters were trying to strengthen the overall number of Māori in Parliament by giving one vote to the Māori Party and one vote to the Labour Party.
During the campaign, Kelvin Davis indicated he would quit politics if he lost that seat. Do you expect him to follow through on that?
He's not indicated to me that that's his intention at this point. I'm sure, nobody who has been elected under the Labour banner at this point, other than Andrew Little, has indicated that they're not intending to continue. There will be plenty of opportunity for people to reflect on that over the next 3 years, and there may well be people who choose to move on. I think that's natural. I think everybody would expect that, but nobody has indicated that at this point.
And in the last week of the campaign, you were looking back at that last week of the campaign, you thought you were on a surge, you thought that you were going to get a much higher vote. Did you think the specials were going to be more favourable to you?
If you look at our on-the-day numbers, they were certainly better than the advance vote numbers. So we did start to pick up a bit of extra momentum as the campaign went along. If you like, the special vote numbers seem to more closely resemble the advance vote numbers than the on-the-day numbers.
123 seats for the next parliament. There's going to be a really interesting combination of parties. Are you feeling good about looking forward to this as opposition leader?
Look, I don't think anyone's going to feel good about an election outcome like the one that the Labour Party has had. We've lost a lot of support, and we do need to reflect on that, and we need to regroup and make sure that we are refreshing. But we've also got an important job to do as well. I have absolute confidence in the 34 MPs who have been elected to be part of our team, that we will form a formidable opposition, because that is actually a really important job. And given the nature of the forthcoming government, the three-way arrangement that is likely, that is now in fact required in order for them to be able to form a majority, we'll have a very important job to do in holding them to account.
In Auckland, Newland obviously held it since 1963, Labour the only party to ever hold it, gone 20-something thousand majority for Helen White, is now down to 20 votes. How concerned are you about how much the Labour vote has bottomed out there? I mean, these are safe Labour seats and they have not come to the party for you.
Overall, I think we do need to spend some time reflecting on Auckland in particular. The Labour Party has lost a lot of support in Auckland over the last 2 years. We saw our numbers drop significantly end of 2021, beginning of 2022, and they didn't recover, and we've seen that play out on these official vote count numbers as well. So we'll need to spend some time reflecting on that and making sure that we actually do re-engage in Auckland and that we rebuild our support in Auckland.
But looking at those seats, it's not actually sort of swing voters or people who went to Jacinda in 2020, it's your base you've lost there.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a big hill to climb for you.
Yeah, as I've indicated, our own internal research shows that we lost a lot of support at the end of that lockdown period in 2021-2022, and we weren't able to regain that support over the last 18 months. So we'll need to spend some time really focused on Auckland and how we rebuild our support base in Auckland.
Do you think that
Ben?
How much of that vote do you take as a personal repudiation of yourself? And have you spent any more time reflecting in the last fortnight about whether you're up for continuing as Labour leader?
Look, as I indicated, that'll be a matter for the Labour Party team when we next meet. We will meet in the next few weeks. We'll have a caucus meeting in the next few weeks. And I'm sure that there'll be a lot of opportunity over the next, not just the next few weeks, but actually the next few months, for us to reflect on the election result and the best way forward.
How much do you want that job?
Look, as I indicated in the weeks following the election, I've still got a bit of fight left in me. I think there's an important job for Labour to do. The Labour Party has always been very good to me. I'm still absolutely committed to the Labour Party.
How soon would you expect there to be a vote on your leadership, given that we now know the full final makeup of the caucus?
That's something that I've yet to have the chance to get feedback from my colleagues on. That's something that I've yet to have feedback from.
If someone asks you, do you want to be the Labour leader, you should be able to say...
Well, I am the Labour Party leader.
Yeah, but do you want to continue being the Labour Party leader?
I have always done the right thing by the Labour Party and I will continue to do that. It's a job that I enjoy.
Just in terms of the rise of Te Pāti Māori, how concerned are you about the long-term impacts that could have for Labour in those Māori seats?
If you look at those results, I haven't had a chance to study them in great detail. They only came out an hour or two ago. But what the results that I have had a chance to look at so far show is that we actually won the party vote in every one of those electorates.
Right, but you must sort of be able to think a little bit deeper and look at the possible threat that Te Pāti Māori poses in those Māori seats, which is crucial to Labour. Labour's always had a very strong Māori caucus and it is dwindling now. Are you worried about that?
Oh, well, they've previously won 5 out of the 7 seats this election. It would appear they've won 5 with one other being only 4 votes in it. So I'd say that one's too close to call at the moment.
And what about, sorry, just last question. What about the senior Māori MPs who have indicated that they want to leave? You must be worried about that.
Look, I think people need an opportunity to reflect on the results and consider that before they make any decisions about their future, and I'm sure they'll do that.
How many seats?
They've indicated that they are, at some point, probably going to leave. So the question is, how concerned are you about the fact that you could lose some senior Māori members caucus, which is already shrinking?
Oh, we've got some real emerging talent in our Māori caucus as well, and I'm looking forward to them being able to play a more senior role.
How many seats do you expect it's likely we'll see a recount?
Well, I think those that are, that to some extent that will depend on, I mean, I can speak for the ones that we're behind in by a very small margin, and Tamaki Makaurau is the smallest of those margins, so only 4 votes in there. The other closest seats, I think, at this point are Mount Albert and Nelson. And we are currently winning those. You generally don't call for a recount if you're ahead. So whether there's a recount in those will be a question for the other side rather than for us.
Is it likely, though, that you get one from National?
They would be absolutely within their right to ask for a recount if that's what they choose to do.
The balance of power. What is your advice to Mr. Lux in negotiations?
Look, I genuinely wish him well. He is going to have to pull together a 3-way government. That won't be an easy task. I wish him well in that endeavour.
The Labour leadership backed Camilla Ballach to run in Mount Albert. Do you think that this has sent a message, given what has happened with that massive majority, for Helen to now only be ahead by 20?
Look, I'm not going to get into a commentary on individual candidates or individual races like that.
But it's pretty well documented. Jacinda Ardern literally walked into that committee meeting to decide on the candidate with Camilla Ballach. She didn't walk in with Helen White.
Yeah, and the local party membership selected candidates in the Labour Party, and they selected Helen White, and she had my full support in that campaign.
Did you think
Richard?
In your review of the election and Labour's look at itself, how difficult is it going to be to balance reclaiming the Māori vote at the same time as you reclaim those voters that went to ACT, New Zealand First or even National because of concerns about issues like co-governance?
Look, there's a lot of water to flow under the bridge in terms of our review of both our election result, but also of the last 6 years. I think when you end a period of time in government, you do need to take the time to reflect on, the full totality of that, not just the campaign, but actually everything that went into the run-up to the campaign as well. That includes the 6 years that we were in government. So we'll have the opportunity to debrief on things that we're proud of, and on things where we thought we could have done better and we'd want to do better next time.
Have you had a conversation?
Look, Phil and I have been friends a long time, and so I'm pleased for him that he's managed to pull back Te Atatu. I think it would have been a pretty brutal way for him to end his political career.
Do you ever think you'd be standing there saying that Mount Albert is too close to call?
As I said, we will have to spend a bit of time reflecting on Auckland in particular. Right the way across Auckland, you've seen a number of electorates that we previously held by quite healthy margins moving away from Labour, and that is something that we need to take very, very seriously.
That one is one of the biggest, if not the biggest margin that's been destroyed in one election, probably ever, 20,000 to 20.
Yeah, and that's certainly something we're going to need to reflect on.
Have you spoken to Kelvin Davis post this?
No, I spoke to him briefly earlier in the week. Obviously, he didn't have the final result at that point.
And it wasn't discussed about his potential retirement?
He certainly indicated if he did not hold the seat, that he was not going to be rushing any decisions on that.
Is there any indication in the special votes that overseas voters might have punished Labour for elements of the COVID response, like MIQ?
I haven't actually seen the breakdown of overseas votes at this point, so I just couldn't form a judgment on that.
In hindsight, did you not spend enough time in Auckland during the campaign?
I spent a lot more in the last couple of weeks than I had intended to. But this Labour's support in Auckland started to really ebb away at the beginning of 2022, and we will spend some time reflecting on the best way of getting that support back.
So you made those decisions. You were part of that key group making those decisions about the Auckland lockdown. Are you the right person to lead Labour and bring Auckland back on board when your name is tarnished with that?
We led New Zealand through an incredibly difficult period. Responding to a global pandemic is never necessarily going to be a popular thing. It certainly was popular in 2020 before most of the substantive decisions around the pandemic had been taken. As we headed through 2020, the end of 2020, right the way through 2021, there were a number of difficult decisions that we had to take, and we've seen that there are consequences of that in terms of popular public support. But we were elected to lead the country through the global pandemic. We did that, and we did that with some of the best outcomes of any country in the world.
What is your message to national opposition?
That we'll be a formidable opposition. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Young people and
You there now? No? Okay.
do something about that, Trevor?
Nearly as bad as the Electoral Commission.
How does it feel?
Very good, thank you. Very good. All right, well, we'll get started. All right, look, well, first of all, thank you very much for coming in. I want to start by thanking the thousands of voters who have trusted ACT with their vote, my neighbours in the Epsom electorate for re-electing me for a fourth time. My commitment is to serve you as a local MP, and for the first time in the history of third parties under MMP, we want to thank the people of Tāmaki for electing their local MP, and I believe Brooke Van Velden will well and truly be a change for the better. I want to thank those 250,000 New Zealand voters who have trusted ACT with their party vote. We campaigned on a platform of real change to fix the economy by ending government waste to get costs down, by restoring the balance between consequences for criminals and rights for their victims, and to ensure that the division, particularly by race, that has riven New Zealand under the Ardern-Hipkins government ends, and we unite New Zealand with a clear understanding of what our treaty means and what it means to be a citizen. Over the coming days and perhaps weeks, we will be working hard with the other parties with which we'd like to form a government in order to come to an arrangement that delivers that change. People want to see a government that can roll up its sleeve and start making the changes that they voted for to relieve them of the considerable pressures that they've experienced over the last 6 years, and in some areas of policy for longer than that. That is why ACT is here. We're grateful for the support. We can't wait to get stuck in and get to work.
How long do you expect that process now to take?
Look, I hope that it'll be a matter of days, perhaps less than a week. I think what's just happened is that the change in expectation to incorporate a third party as a necessary part of that government may throw up new dynamics. We don't know. We've worked very hard with the Nats. We've reached out to New Zealand First in the past 3 weeks, and we hope that we're going to be able to have a rapid and productive discussion about how the three parties can work together to deliver better government for New Zealand.
You were surely aware that this was a likely possibility that you would need all three parties. Did you start planning for it? Did you have contingencies in place?
Yeah, and I'm on the record saying that what's happened today was a likely outcome, in fact the most likely outcome from the final vote being counted. There may still be more judicial reviews on one seat within 4 seats. So what I know is that this was always a likely probability, and therefore we would have to consider the possibilities of a two-party government or a three-party government. Either way, what matters is that we actually deliver on that change people voted for. We are now committed to doing that.
Can you talk us through how it's going to work? Will you sit down with all three parties, or are you negotiating separately from New Zealand First?
Well, ACT and National have worked pretty hard on what a deal between us looks like. We would anticipate that we will sit down with all three parties, I expect at some point next week. We've also reached out separately to New Zealand First, and we'll continue to do that as well, because ultimately the voters have asked three parties to work together, and the voter in an election is king.
You've reached out to them, have they not responded?
That's accurate, yes.
So you have not heard from Winston Peters or anyone from New Zealand First?
No, I haven't. But we welcome discussion, because ultimately the voters are king and queen in an election. They've asked us to work together, and that is what we must now do.
Do you have a list of policies that you're prepared to set aside in order to form that government, and can you tell us what they are?
No.
You don't
that would be negotiating by media. Look, I think what people have asked for change on is the government's got too big, there's too much red tape, there's too much waste, and that's pushed up their costs. The crime scene has become far too tolerant of offending and has removed the rights from victims on race relations and human rights generally. We have started dividing people into identities instead of celebrating their common humanity. Those are the areas where we need to see change.
Don't you think actually what we've seen from voters with this large proportion of Māori voting, the Māori Party gaining 6 seats, winning quite a number of those electorate seats, isn't that actually a sign that people are worried about some of that divisive rhetoric and they want Māori to have a greater say?
Well, the Māori Party, I understand, got 3% of the vote nationwide.
Yes, but they have clearly won a number of seats off Labour, and by some of them by quite big margins. Isn't that a sign that those people in those communities want a greater voice?
I think you can break it down. I mean, you could similarly ask how on earth could Labor win Mount Roskill? I think in each seat there's often the dynamics of the person. I would argue that the personality and the work ethic of Brooke Van Velden was critical in Tamaki, but the party vote result I would say is a better indication of the overall sentiment across the country. And I just make the point that Te Pāti Māori, and good on them and congratulations for their result, but 3% of the party vote went to them when 17% of New Zealand is Māori.
Your party vote dropped from election night slightly. Is that disappointing?
It's pretty typical. I think last time we went from 8 to 7.6 on the specials. This time we went from 9 to 8.7 on the specials or something like that. So it's almost exactly proportional to what happened last time. I guess it shows that our voters are often more organised and better at getting registered.
You've said in the past that you wouldn't work around a table with Winston Peters. Can you stomach working with him now?
Oh, look, I think what the voters have said is that they want us to work together. They've said that they want change on key policy issues, and that's exactly where we need to focus our efforts.
Would you share a cabinet seat with him?
Not a seat, no. Far out. That's
Around the table of the cabinet?
if they were two different seats, then yes, I think that's possible.
And have you thought any more about what portfolios you might want now that you can see the exact percentages and so forth?
Yeah, we have. And look, ACT will be looking for portfolios where we can deliver the change that people have asked for, and that's around the economy, it's around law and order, and it's around our unity as a country. It's also around health and education, which I think have been major areas of failure as a result of some of the failing policy elsewhere. I think that we have a lot to offer. I mean, people accuse ACT of many things, but not of having a shortage of policy ideas. We always have that, and we're here to offer it to a future government.
Do you want to be Finance Minister?
Look, I think I could do that job very well, but again, it's not the only job I could do well, and ultimately we've always said it's more important to get the policy right for the people than the positions for the politicians.
How does this work? What happens in the week ahead? Is it, dinner with Luxon and Peters, or phone calls? Will you be heading to Wellington?
Look, in terms of location, mealtime and communication, medium, all of those things I think we'll be able to work out. But in terms of where we are right now, what's important is that we have our eyes on the prize. People want the change they voted for. They need that policy change to give them real relief in their lives. And exactly when, how we meet which city, that will all be worked out.
You've been uncharacteristically quiet recently. Was that National asking you to not talk during negotiations?
Oh, no, I've just seen that what we need to do is work through the negotiations that we have, and every time you start negotiating through media, you make it harder to keep having those negotiations. So it's not a request from National. I think it's a strategy that probably all three parties have found advantageous, because they can get the work done and not have to, commentate on something when you're not quite finished the work yet.
And in these negotiations, who holds more power? Is it New Zealand First with the balance of power, or you with more seats?
Well, again, you could make arguments for that either way, but if what you're saying is that New Zealand First might consider forming a government with Labour, Te Pāti Māori and the Greens, you probably don't need to be at this press conference. You could go and write an exclusive.
In 2017, Labour basically formed its deal with the Greens and then had to wait for New Zealand First. Are you in a position where ACT and National have actually come pretty close to your agreement, and now you just have to wait for the New Zealand First side of it?
Well, we expect that ACT won't be signing up to anything without knowing what arrangements have been made with any other party. So it will be, at the very least, an equitable arrangement. We certainly won't see a rerun of what happened in 2017. I don't think that that's democratic or respectful.
Well, what happens if Winston Peters insists it happens like it did in 2017? You can say all you like, he might feel differently.
Oh, he may do, but again, as I've just said to Glenn, you've got a situation where three parties have committed to working together. That's a little bit different from a scenario where one party is threatening day by day to work with someone else.
David, can I ask you your message to the business community? What's sort of your first priorities?
Business will first and foremost be respected again. I think for a long time the tenor of public conversation emanating from the government has been that business is somehow up to no good, and if only there's another review, another commissioner, another market study, another tax or regulation, then business can be made to do good against its inherent nature. We don't agree with that. We think that business is inherently a force for good. Many of ex-MPs either come from a business background or their families do. They're close to business throughout their lives. Then you get down to what is material. Well, government spending needs to be reduced. It is putting so much pressure on inflation, which in turn is pressuring interest rates. And as you see with a number of recent business failures, things happen in business. Tough things happen every day. But if your background pressure of cost pressures and interest rate pressures are tougher, then businesses start to fall over. So we've got to improve the fiscal and monetary environment for business. Then we've got to improve the regulatory environment, because fundamentally, if you want to analyse what's happened with New Zealand the last 30 or 40 years, people have spent more time in compliance activity, less time in productive activity. That's hurt our productivity, and it hurts our culture, because over time people see that they have less time to do productive stuff, more time tied up in regulatory activity, and you see less heroes who actually succeeded in business as a result, and that changes our culture over time. So basically respect good government finances and red tape and regulation.
And are your ideas significantly different at all to the wealthy businessmen that funded your campaign?
Look, I don't really know. I haven't had detailed discussions about policy with them, but what I would say is that there are some people who are perhaps so devoid of ideas that they assume everything's a conspiracy. I hope that you're not one.
Is one of the government departments that you think should have their funding cut the Electoral Commission?
Well, I think that there's going to have to be a serious question asked about how they manage to do so many basic things so poorly, and then the same question that I think should be applied to any government department: what are the core activities they need to do well? Are they equipped to do them? And what else are they doing that they need to stop doing? At the moment, the primary concern is what are the things that they're not doing well.
Well, could they potentially need more funding and resources, and then special votes would have been counted faster? Because the Electoral Commission said this morning they had staff working around the clock to do this. Isn't that a sign that they need more?
I certainly think that in the wake of this election there's been a number of disappointing events surrounding the Electoral Commission, and the reasons why are going to need to be investigated. But I think if we always jump to the conclusion that giving more funding is the solution to a problem, then we're just throwing money at each problem and we end up where we are right now: high debt, high inflation, high interest rates, not a lot of good and happy outcomes from government services. So, yep, you may be right, but I'd like to ask first, what's gone wrong? How could it have been done differently? And does it involve more money? It might, but that shouldn't be our first conclusion.
Isn't that the problem with assuming that every department needs funding cut, though, is because then it creates problems like this?
Well, if you are saying that the current problems in government are caused by reducing funding, I invite you to propose the departments that have had funding cuts or staff reductions. Basically, every government department has had a massive increase in staffing and funding in the last 6 years, and unfortunately, the public services received by New Zealanders have declined and deteriorated in almost every area. So, again, I think what we need to do is start asking, before we start saying, well, there must need to be more inputs, why are we not getting the outcomes we want, and what can we do differently to ensure we do?
We've just had jobs cut as an example of a government department that have just lost jobs. So in the week that we saw a guilty verdict in the Cardi trial, WorkSafe have also cut.
Yeah, well, the event that they had the trial happened, 3 years earlier, so I'm not sure about the causality there. But, I mean, there'd be a lot of people out there who would say that the area of workplace health and safety is not going well. The costs of compliance are very high, the rules being enforced are illogical, and it may well be that rather than saying, well, more people to go and keep doing the same thing that's failing, that might not be the answer. The answer might be to go back to asking, what does government need to do? How does it do it well? What other things is it doing it needs to stop doing? That's how you get efficiency. That's what people have been doing up and down this country for year on year as we've gone through this cost of living crisis, tightening their belt, working out what they need to do, how to do it well, and stopping the things they can no longer afford. Government is going to have to do that too. Doesn't mean you get a worse life or worse results. It means that you're more efficient with the taxpayer money people give you.
Do you regret what you said about Winston Peters, saying he was the most untrustworthy politician and that you wouldn't sit around the cabinet table with him?
No, I don't. I said that at a time when it appeared unlikely we'd get to this particular point, and now we're here. We've got to respect the will of the voters. But what I said, is still true, and unfortunately, we now will do our best to deliver the change that people want.
And if you do have to sit around that cabinet table, are you breaking a promise to the public?
Well, no, I'm not, because ultimately, what people want is to their various challenges, what they want to see.
To say is a big thank you to all the voters for the support of the National Party in particular, but I also just want to say a big thank you to all of our supporters and volunteers who worked so incredibly hard over the last 3 to 4 months in this campaign. I want to acknowledge those that have worked hard and become MPs in this very special place. It's really a great achievement for them, and I know they're very excited about that. But I also want to acknowledge those that have pushed and campaigned so hard and fallen short, and how tough that is for some of them as well. We also want to acknowledge those that have missed out, and there are some races, obviously there are some pretty close recounts that will probably be advanced in our case, probably 2 seats at this stage. With that, happy to take your questions.
Can you now give us a deadline? When will you be able to form a government?
I can't give you a deadline. What I can tell you is that there is goodwill and good faith from all 3 political party leaders to move through the processes constructively and as quickly as possible, but to make sure that we have strong and stable government, and that's really what we've got to do. It's only today that we've had clarity, 3 weeks after an election, and had our final votes confirmed and respected.
How much strength does this give New Zealand First's negotiating hand?
Well, I think, as I said from the beginning, the day after the election, that's why we've been progressing conversations with both parties over the last couple of weeks, is that, this has been the most likely and expected outcome for us. And so, for our point of view, we want to make sure we get a strong, stable government that's actually going to be constructive and work together well.
Are you more likely to form a coalition with New Zealand First or a coalition with
Again, not getting into any of that. As I said, I am going to continue the frame that we've been having these conversations with, which is respecting confidentiality, building good faith, goodwill with each party, and actually getting into the content of actually what we want to achieve together.
You said that there would be a couple of recounts. Could you tell us which seats that you are planning on recounting?
Yeah, look, I think for us at the moment, Mount Albert, it's about minus, I think, 29 seats, I think, or 20 seats, and Nelson's at minus 29.
What does it say about both National and about Labour that they went from a 20,000 some odd majority in Mount Albert down to just 20?
Look, I mean, that's obviously a question for the Labour Party, but from our point of view, as you saw through our campaign, actually over a 6-month period, we've been working really hard in those battleground seats. Where we spent most of our time was exactly in those places. We did take, thousands and thousands of party votes out of big red seats. It was very much a party vote comes in a red seat or a blue seat. We don't care where it comes from, but we're going to campaign hard to make that happen.
During the campaign, this was described. This scenario now was described as a last resort option and also a worst case scenario. So you must be a bit disappointed.
No, look, I mean, the results on election night for us laid that expectation up. We said the day after that we typically lose 1 or 2 seats in special votes. That's what's proved to be the case here again after this election. And as I said, we've cracked on immediately and had constructive relationship building conversations, talked about arrangements with respect to parties.
Will it make your job more difficult?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's exactly the mode that we've been working in the last couple of weeks, and so nothing has changed from our end. It's just about now making sure we crack on and actually deliver a great government that's strong, stable, secure, and moving forward.
You did say during the campaign, though, I don't want to work with Winston Peters, but I will if I have to.
Well, I can say we've had a great series of conversations, and we look forward to continuing those.
So you now want to work? You now want to work?
Well, we have been in conversations the day after the election and actually working that through in the last few weeks. So there's no change from us. As I said to you, that's the most likely outcome. We gave a clear order about parties we wanted to work with, the parties that people supported and voted for change with. We're in good constructive relationship with them.
With a little nuanced difference, though, about parties you would work with and parties you want to work with.
Yeah.
You said you didn't want to work with New Zealand First. Do you now want to work with New Zealand First?
All I'd say to you is we have been working together over the last couple of weeks. Sorry, mate. Sorry, at the back.
You said that the parties are working together with goodwill and good faith. David Seymour said multiple times he's reached out to Winston Peters and New Zealand First and they refused to meet. What's going on there?
Look, again, that's something that we'll bring together when we actually come together with our final set of agreements. But at our case, we've been working with both of those parties. I'm very confident, having spoken to both leaders, that everyone understands what's involved here. They want to deliver certainty to the New Zealand people as quickly as possible, and we will have strong and stable government. Sorry, Jason.
There is tension between those two parties?
Sorry?
Do you admit, though, there is tension that needs resolving between those two parties?
Look, I mean, there's going to be tension between lots of parties in this place. We all have slightly different takes and slightly different views and policies on a range of different issues. But I'm constructive, but we are working through these issues very constructively, and there is goodwill and good faith on all sides to make it work. Sorry, Jane?
Will you be conducting parallel negotiations when you said you'll bring that together at the end of the process? Is that your expectation, that we continue to talk to both of them and at that point they would be...
That is essentially the process I've been following over the last couple of weeks, and we'll continue with that.
Would you expect a little bit of relationship building between New Zealand First and ACT before they got to that point?
Look, again, I'm not going to get into that. All I can tell you is that we are working constructively with both parties. Having spoken with both parties, and you would have seen some of the public statements, that we are going to come together and we're going to form a strong, stable government.
What's the response been from New Zealand First and ACT to the parallel negotiation to basically keep that separate and then you come together? Are they happy with that approach as well?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's the way that we've chosen to work, and it's been the most constructive way because actually each party has a different set of concerns. We are the major party that has to make it work, and as a result, that's the role that we're playing. And so for us, it's been the cleanest, best way for us to make a lot of progress in quite a short period of time. Sorry, Richard?
What's your preference for the agreement that you actually reach with each party? Is it for full coalition agreements or for looser supply and confidence agreements? And with that, is your preference for finely detailed agreements or broader statements of purpose?
Again, just not going to get into it with you, and apologies for that up front, but I said that from day one. We're going to work with the parties, good faith, goodwill, confidentially, professionally, constructively, and that'll be revealed when we get that sorted out. Sorry, Jason.
Just to clarify, will you be waiting for the recounts of these seats that are very much still on a knife edge before you announce any coalition or supply and confidence arrangement? Is that the last linchpin in all of this, or could you?
No. I think the reality is we can move forward on this basis. The party vote scenario is very clear for us. The standings of the respective parties are now very clear and confirmed. The relative weighting of constituent versus list seats may shift based on those recounts, but for us, we can move forward on this basis.
Sorry, to clarify your answer to Jane before. You do want to get all three parties in a room before
Ultimately, we
you
will,
actually
yes.
sign the deals?
Ultimately, we will, yep.
Both Winston Peters and Dan Seymour have said that a deal could be struck next week. How much pressure does that put on you to have a deal over the line next week? And if it does go longer, is that on you?
Well, I'll just say to you, I think we've done an exceptionally good job. Today, 3 weeks after an election night, 20% more of our votes have been counted and we have a final outcome. And already we've made tremendous progress in an unofficial environment with preliminary results where we've actually said what I said I'd do. We've progressed the relationships and arrangements with respective parties. And so we will now crack on with the clarity that we have, which is exactly what we were expecting it to be, as quickly as we possibly can. You've heard public statements from all the leaders to say, we understand the desire for certainty, we understand that everyone wants to get clarity, but we are working as hard as we possibly can, and there is a real good intentionality from all three political leaders for that to happen.
Sorry, that doesn't answer the question.
Though. Expectation that of someone like David Seymour that he hopes a government will be formed within the next week?
Well, look, again, I can't guarantee a timing. I just genuinely can't, because there is complexity and arrangements that we need to work through with each respective party. We need to come together, actually all three parties together, but we are working with as great a speed as we possibly can. But what is important here is that we deliver for the New Zealand people a strong and stable government that can get things done for them, and that is in the mind of all of us. And so having quality, in-depth, upfront conversations, getting the relationships set, getting the policy areas understood of cooperation is really important to us.
Would you put you going to APEC as Prime Minister in the realistic or the ambitious category?
I would really like to go. I think there'd be really good advantages in me being there for an obvious set of reasons. But again, I just cannot guarantee it. My primary responsibility now is to focus on forming a strong and stable government.
But based on the conversations you've had, is it a realistic prospect, or do you think it's still highly ambitious that Wednesday week you would have got to the point that you have been sworn in as Prime Minister?
Well, we've got quite a lot to get under, I'd say. It's only today we've had clear result. Yes, you're right, it's Wednesday week. It's less than, less than 2 weeks away, 10 days away before we're actually on a plane to APEC. Everyone is mindful of that. We're trying to work as hard as we can to get that resolved. But I just say to you, I think we're doing an exceptionally good job here. We've got a lot of complexity to manage. We've been delivered a result by the New Zealand people. It's only been confirmed today, and we're working as quickly as we can.
Winston Peters and David Seymour mindful of that, or is that a desire from your end and they're not bothered either way?
Well, look, I mean, we're all conscious of it. It's a good opportunity, but at the end of the day, I will take as long as it takes to get strong and stable government in place for New Zealand. And if that means that I don't make APEC for some reason, so be it. We'll live with that, and we'll build those relationships in other ways. But what I have to say is I've only got one job at the moment, and that is to build strong and stable government. So,
Can you completely rule out the prospect of a second election?
Yes.
Would you like?
Sorry,
so,
Luke.
So you want to crack on as quickly as possible. What does tonight, tomorrow, Sunday, what do they hold for you?
We'll work on, obviously, through the weekends. We're having time often for each of us to digest our conversations. We'll use some of that for this weekend. Some of it will be ongoing conversations with the respective parties and leaders.
How do you personally approach these sorts of talks? What are the first things that you like to kind of get out of the way, if you like? Or?
Well, look, I mean, it has actually been constructive conversations, different conversations, but constructive conversations with both party leaders and with their teams at times, and our people on our side as well. And we just, we work out the areas of where we have commonality, and where actually, different areas of policy can actually add to making our government better and stronger. And so, that's the kind of conversation we want to get into. And some of them are quite detailed conversations. But again, we need to elevate up and say, right, well, what are the big rocks and the additive things that actually the other parties are bringing to our agenda? What are the things where we've got variances that we need to discuss and work our way through? But, as I said, it's been done in good faith, goodwill. I've been really impressed from my position, working with both those leaders and their teams, that actually it's been very constructive.
So get the policy areas sorted first and then work on the other stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's where we've started to say, look, what are the areas where you think, fast forward 3 years from now, what has been your contribution to this government? And what is it that's important to you, and how do we work together on that? Yes, mate.
In an election where there has been a massive blue wave, where you swept up a whole bunch of electorates, how was Nicola Willis, the deputy leader, not able to win her seat?
Oh, she did an exceptionally good job. I mean, look at Ohario, look at the dynamics over a long period of time. Nicola did an exceptionally good job there, and as did many of our candidates across the country as well.
Are you disappointed with that, though?
No, absolutely not. She did an exceptionally good job. I mean, she's up against a well-known local candidate in a red seat, and she ran it incredibly hard, and she did an exceptionally good job. There's nothing more she could have done. Sorry, Jason. Sorry. Hang on, I'll just go to Jason.
Have you been in contact with either Winston Peters or David Seymour since the results have come out?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have.
What did you say?
We just spoke after the results that had come out at 2 o'clock.
Who did you call first?
I spoke to both of them.
At the same time?
And I'm not going to, it doesn't matter. I'm not telling you.
It does matter.
No, it doesn't matter.
Any appetite at all for a treaty-based referendum?
Sorry?
Do you have any appetite at all for a treaty?
Our policy was that on that before the election was pretty clear. That's not something we support.
So that's still off the table for you? Sorry, just
again, guys, I'm not getting into any of the content and policy conversations. I appreciate you want to. I said I'd do that in the room with the leaders and their teams, and that's what we're going to continue to do.
What do you make of Party Māori taking those last two Māori seats?
Well, I mean, it is what it is, right? I mean, they've obviously delivered quite a two-seat overhang through the process, and that's going to change the shape of our parliament. We still have the Port Waikato by-election to come, which will create a 123-seat parliament, obviously, and we will campaign hard there.
I know we've just had one, but in the next election, will National contest all Māori seats?
Well, again, our strategy there was to actually get experience running in the Māori seats. We signed up for 2. We had 2 really great candidates. They worked incredibly hard. They took the proposition and the policy plan to those seats, and it would be our intention to keep building out, to build out our position in the Māori seats.
Do you think that it's going to be more difficult, though, having Te Pāti Māori so strong with 6 members, that they're going to be a stronger opposition, particularly if you're wanting to pass Māori policies?
Well, look, I mean, as you can see, National, New Zealand First and ACT will have 68 seats ultimately, I suspect, in Parliament. There'll probably be, 55 or whatever is on the other side.
But they'll be more vocal in advocating
sure.
against what you're...
I'd expect all parties to stand up and advocate for what they believe in, and that's great.
Can we just return to Jamie's earlier question? If both Winston Peters and David Seymour have said that can be done in a week. If you can't get it done in a week, is that on you, or is it posturing from those two leaders?
Again, what I'm just highlighting to you is I can't guarantee a timing. You'd understand that in my position.
Will you take responsibility if you can't get it done in a week?
What I take responsibility for is moving through the process as quickly and as constructively as we can, because at the end of the day, we need to be able to deliver strong and stable government, and that's the intention of all the leaders. What you're seeing, I think, is a lot of good positivity from everybody involved. We want to move quickly. We understand the country wants certainty. We are dealing with an MMP system that has only just today delivered the final set of results. We've already progressed our relationships and some of our conversation on arrangements. We'll continue to move on now and crack on with as much speed as we can, but we need to get a good agreements at the end.
And have you already agreed to any other parties' policies? I'm not asking which ones, but have you already formed consensus around some things that would be ready to go?
No, I'm just not going to get into any of that at this stage. But as soon as we're ready to go, we'll detail all of that and make that public to everybody. Again, we'll talk about that later. Sorry.
You've been expecting this result since election night, so you've had 3 weeks to form an agreement. Shouldn't that have been long enough? And would have you expected to have something to announce today?
Well, I just say to you, I think we've done an exceptionally good job. I think when you got 20% of the vote not counted 3 weeks after an election night, I appreciate it's been hurry up and wait for everybody. But the fact that we have cracked on and actually been able to have conversations without even having final clarity has actually been a good thing. So I think we are moving at this with good pace. We're importantly trying to have quality conversations so that we build that strong stability that we want to see in this government.
Are you going to move into Premier House?
Sorry?
Are you going to move into Premier House?
That's a conversation I haven't really got into in great detail yet, but most likely I suspect.
Given you won't put a deadline on yourself, is it frustrating that Winston Peters and David Seymour are saying that a deal is possible next week? Because they're essentially putting the clock on you.
No, I would say to you that's nothing different from what we've all been saying, which is that we genuinely want to move through with...
They're saying that it could be possible next week. You're not
sure,
any time
but we all want to make sure it happens as quickly as it possibly can. It's just that none of us can guarantee when it's happening, but what you're seeing there is an intent, a genuine intent from everybody to say, we don't want this to string out, we don't want this to take oodles of time, but we are going to take as much time that we need in order to get that strong, stable government in place.
Maybe there's immense frustration with the Electoral Commission and how long it's taken to count those votes. Do you have confidence in the Electoral Commission?
I think there's a lot of good questions, to be honest, to be asked after a government's formed about the Electoral Commission and what we learnt from this experience. I think the fact that we didn't have the how to vote cards out early, the fact that there were challenges on the day. I do think 3 weeks to get special votes counted is too long, personally. I think we should be putting a 24/7 full court press to the job, because there's nothing more important than getting people the clarity that they want after an election. I think there's questions to be asked about whether the daily votes should be released as they count those special votes, and I personally think there's real value in the Electoral Commission actually doing local government elections to build muscle memory and training there.
So you're not willing to express confidence in the Electoral Commission?
Again, I just think there's a natural process here. I do have confidence in the Electoral Commission, but what I say is after every election we take a deep review, all parties get to input into it, and I think that's an important process, and I think there are some genuinely big questions that we could ask in this review as well.
Do you, as incoming Prime Minister, hold confidence for every single public service chief executive that there is across the board right now?
Absolutely, we do until we don't. And the point is, I'm being very direct about it. I have been unimpressed by some of the outcomes that we've seen across the public service. We've talked about that. I think all three parties are aligned on the fact that we want to see better delivery out of our public service. But we have amazing public servants, who are incredibly impressive leaders. And I think a part of it is actually as a government to be very clear about what you want to achieve. And I think the learning from this last government with an absolute majority was it just has taken on too much, didn't deliver anything, and as a result people are very frustrated about it.
Do you consider...
Sorry?
Should anyone be fearful about losing their job?
Oh, well, as long as they're performing, they'll be great.
Do you consider 38% a good endorsement of both the National Party and yourself?
Look, I think considering where we were 2 years ago, where a lot of people, even in this room, didn't give us much chance of winning this election, we actually have come a tremendous way in 2 years. We've unified our party at a parliamentary level, at a party level. We held the government well to account through the course of last year, and this year we took our common sense policies on the road.
Got 39% in 2005. Is it really a stunning endorsement?
Well, I just say in an MMP environment, we've been able to form a government, and I think that's a pretty impressive result when you consider we've been up against one of the most, the biggest winning governments with an absolute majority in recent human history in New Zealand. So political history.
On that frustration for yourself and the public on how long it's taken, the 3 week time period, Given that context, do you not think that the public deserve a bit more detail on the level of progress that you've made over the last 3 weeks?
Well, I think the public have been clear with, from the day after the election, is to say what the public voted for was change, and what they want us to be able to do is go off and deliver for them a strong and stable government that's going to drive and deliver that change. That's what they care about. I don't think, and that's what I've signalled. It's been going well. We're making progress. We're going to do that in a constructive, professional, confidential way, because it's important that we get a good bedrock of relationship to be able to actually drive our policy agenda forward. And so, I think that's the New Zealand public. They want us. They voted for change. They want change, and I've got to give them a strong, stable government. But we've only just found out less than an hour or so ago the final result. So we're making progress. Okay, last question. Yep. Again, apologies, I'm just not going to get into any of the detail around that, because we're working that through with the individual parties. Sorry, Ben, last question.
You said prior to the election you'd like to make Australia your first visit as Prime Minister. Is that now also beholden to the negotiating process, or can you do that?
Look, that would be my intention, but the reality is I'm working with the process right now to make sure I focus on forming a strong, stable government. Until that happens, all those other considerations are off the table until I'm clear about we've got a good government here. Okay, team, thanks so much. Appreciate your time. Okay.